the News Channel 5 network, this is Morning Line with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Listen to that music. Nick Barris here. It's a spooky edition of Morning Line on this Wednesday. Happy Halloween to everyone, and we'll have some of that theme music going on. We have a really scary guest on. He's come this morning dressed as the Davidson County Sheriff. Terrifying. Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. Good morning to you. See, a spooky edition of Ask the Sheriff.
I don't know that I knew
Terrifying
that.
costume over here, Carla.
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty scary.
Look, a lot of people might dress up as a sheriff, but I mean, the traditional mindset of a sheriff, I guess, if you go back to the old days, cowboy boots, and you got a 6-gun. Do you have a 6-gun?
I don't have
a hat or something. Look, there's some sheriffs that look more the part. Now you look the part of a sheriff in a metropolitan area, but Sheriff Enoch George.
Yeah.
You remember him?
Yes.
No longer in Murray County, but was. I always thought when I first moved here and saw him, and he'd sometimes wear the uniform and stuff like. He looked the part of a sheriff.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Just the silver hair, and he'd have the badge. Some people play it up more than others, and you have a badge, you have a uniform, right?
It's funny you say that. I mean, I never know how to respond. I've had people just walk up on the street and say, "Well, you don't look like a sheriff," and I always wonder. I don't know what that means,
right,
but I do see. I'm on the board of the National Sheriff Association, and I always get a kick out of if you could see a room full of sheriffs from all over the country. I don't know, say there's probably 30 people on this board that I'm on, and. But if you just look around, and I mean, if I ask you to draw a picture of a sheriff from Laramie, Wyoming, this guy's mustache is out to here. He wears a hat everywhere, and you get to Texas, they got these belt buckles, and you got some. There's a guy down. Matter of fact, he was just sworn in as a U.S. Marshal, but he's a third-generation sheriff. His grandfather in Georgia, his father, and he. To me, he looks like a sheriff. His name is John Kerry Biddick. He was just, like I said, sworn in as a marshal, but. I don't know, it's an interesting, like I said, and where you're from. You get down to Louisiana, for example, the sheriff down there is the coroner, the tax collector, they do all sorts of functions, and so it varies around the country, and of course we had a very flamboyant Fate Thomas here back in the, I went to work in the late 80s, and he had a white hat and a cigar and a white suit everywhere he went.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that'll ever be.
You can play the role, maybe. Do you have a sheriff's uniform? Is it the police department has their police department blues, I guess, the blue uniform?
I've got a uniform. I think it was bought. I've never worn it. I'm just not a big fan. My view of it's always been that the role that I'm in, and I grew up working there, but the role that I'm in now is really not that. I really view it more as managing what we do and trying to keep that, and I don't. I respect everybody who has to wear it or does wear a uniform. I was with Chief Anderson yesterday, and we're sitting there at lunch. I'm more comfortable in trying to be what I think is the administrator of what we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes I'm in meetings, and sometimes, and quite frankly, sometimes I think the uniform brings more attention to you than. And I'm talking about when you're not at the job. And so it works out. I respect the situation, but I made a decision. I remember. You may not remember this, but really the last couple of police chiefs didn't wear uniforms. I mean, Surpass did, but Kirshner and Emmett Turner didn't. And so I kind of view that as more the comfort for me. And but respect the situation. And
but your deputies wear uniforms, right? I mean, when they're out on patrol and they're out and about. But you're not always doing that. You're doing a lot of administrative duties, and you have various events you go to.
Right. And I just for me, it's more comfortable. And I'm not. Our chief deputy is a Marine. He wears our uniform. And really both. He has and most all of our other staff that are in our executive level do that. But I don't know. I've always viewed it as a little bit more. My dad and Chief Kirshner were best friends in high school and grew up, and I always kind of looked to him. I always thought as a young person. And he became the chief of police when I was a teenager, and then oddly enough, by the time I came to be the chief deputy, he was still the chief of police, and so I just always kind of looked to him, and I liked the way he had a college degree and really professionalized law enforcement for Nashville, one of the first people to do that, and I just always felt like that was maybe the reason I viewed it that way.
Yeah,
I'm not,
no, that makes sense.
not against
Whoever your role model was,
right.
and your father, of course, just dressing professionally.
Right,
That's
just
what it is. I mean,
look.
well, is there anything special that goes on? I mean, on Halloween, issues that you deal with? First of all, with regard to anything at the jail, but I mean, also, can it be a busy night for you guys in terms of intake? But is there anything going on with the inmates that's observing Halloween in any way?
We don't do much there.
You do it for like Thanksgiving and things like that sometimes.
Right. Try to make it look. And in this situation, it's kind of a strange story. We did sober ride for many years and different holidays, but it's been several years ago. We did some research into what was the best holiday to do a sober ride program because of the DUI arrest and quite frankly, people being killed around the country. And what you find out is Halloween, when it lands on the weekends, is a pretty dangerous time with all the kids on the streets and all the stuff going on, and unfortunately parties and drinking and all that. But when it lands on a day of the week like this, it helps a little bit that you're not having to deal with the DUI and the bookings and arrests and all that as much as you would on the weekend. But we were talking before we came on air, but I'm interested to see how the petition goes about
going to Saturdays,
the last
like
Saturday
that.
Or something of the month, I guess. But as a kid, I mean, I still have that at heart. I mean, I think that would be the better way to do it, just so you don't have to get up on Sunday and go to.
I'm with you, kind of. Some people like the tradition of it or whatever, but I like the idea. I don't know what you folks think about going to Halloween and setting it up on a weekend. Now, I know that you said no. You don't like the idea of that, Mary? Mary Elena is saying no. How come?
I know why.
Oh. I know why. Because her birthday
always is Mary Elena's birthday, which is more important than Halloween anyway.
Well, of course. And we wouldn't want to move her birthday.
We should recognize that and get that other thing off.
Her birthday's always on Halloween.
Always, every year.
Well, all right, so it's Wednesday. By the way, Hopkinsville did theirs, I think, yesterday because they were worried about rain tonight. I know Amy Watson went trick-or-treating with her grandson. So, I mean, that can happen. So, will there be more intake for you guys on Halloween? I mean, is there more tomfoolery out there?
The weekend is, if it lands on the weekend, it really ramps it up. And, you know, I remember back in the old days, or when I say old days, when I used to work in the booking world back, gosh, 25 years ago, it was a fun night to work because people were arrested in the strangest of costumes. Sure. I mean, here they would come into jail. Imagine this. People go to, you know, these parties where they're dressed up as something and then they get arrested on the way home and they're coming to jail in their devil's outfit or their, you know, whoever the president was at the time, and here they're getting booked in. That's their booking photo. And so, I don't know, but it was always kind of funny to see what was being brought in. But different times.
I wanted to ask you this about it's different. It's federal, or I guess federal, or it must have been a federal prison in West Virginia. But Whitey Bulger, Whitey Bulger, and we're finding out, you know, the notorious mob boss. And I'm sorry, I'm not shedding a tear on this, even though it sounded like he lived violently, he died violently. Initially, there was the report, and you know it, you know, as you've likely heard, that this mob boss was behind bars serving, you know, a life sentence, 2 life sentences. Sentenced though back in 2013. He's 89 years old. He had been on the lam for just an amazing life, horrible life, if you ask me. But anyway, he was found dead, and the initial calls yesterday when we heard he had died is that he was found unresponsive, and paramedics were sent because of a cardiac arrest. Well, we've since found that the FBI is investigating. It appears as though he was beaten to death by other inmates, including a former mob hitman who was behind bars, and there's video of the 2 of them going in. I've heard, among other things, his eyes were basically gouged out, and some other things. He was beaten to death in a cell. And I'm just curious, as you saw that, you know, obviously a high-profile inmate. What would you imagine? These 2 that went after him. He's 89 years old. This is an old man.
I mean, that's almost a 90-year-old man.
Old man, and they go in there and kill him. And would that have been inmates maybe trying to make a name for themselves, or would this have been something certainly that should have been prevented by the prison staff there? I mean, come on, you have a high-profile guy and these others bad dudes, and they go in there. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you the other one was Jeffrey Dahmer. Remember that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, here I think there's 2 things to think about when you have it inside. One of them is sometimes the inmates are in fear of this person because of, I believe the Dahmer case was more that way, where they believe this guy may be strange or weird enough to do harm to me, so therefore there's acting out on him in that case. I believe in these situations, clearly with all he is tied to and all the issues that are going on, you know, it was a retaliation of something.
You
in
think
the
someone from
streets.
the outside ordered it? Because they remembered that he was a snitch and he's 89 and he's there, but they said, look, you know, before he dies of natural causes, let's send a message and go after him.
That's my, and I don't have any
we don't know.
knowledge.
The FBI is still looking into it.
The weird part for me, as you ask, you know, should they have known or whatever, the move that he made from Oklahoma to West Virginia.
Just moved too.
That day, Monday or Tuesday. I mean, so that's peculiar to me as to why was the move made. It could have been just a reclassification, which happens all the time. But it's a pretty quick, once he lands there, you know, what happened to him happened pretty quickly. And I don't think the inmates would not have known he's coming to their facility. They just don't communicate that
quickly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a little strange, but it sounds like to me, and again, maybe it's a pact they had from the beginning. If we ever come in contact with him inside, here's what we do. And you know, I don't know who did it, who will be charged or whatever, but the reality is a lot of those guys are facing life already. So there's not, in that world.
Now two of these guys, they'll be known for the ones that took out Whitey Bulger, and you've seen there are plenty of folks who, you know, were hurt by him, who are popping champagne. And again, a brutal beating of an 89-year-old. I shed no tears for Whitey Bulger, but something like this should not happen behind bars.
Right. An 89-year-old man. I mean, I keep saying that. I mean, it's hard to live to 89 living a healthy life.
Right. And he was still plugging up. But you make a great point, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm just curious as what it is about how this happened, because he just moved from the Oklahoma prison to the West Virginia. Why was he moved? And then how was it these inmates at the new facility were able to know that it's him within 2 days and then go in and have access to take him out?
Right.
Because you know, you have high-profile inmates in the Davidson County Jail. In fact, we now know Travis Ranking is back with you. I know there's a gag order, so I'm not going to ask you to go into details, but we know he was at Middle Tennessee Mental Health. Story came out that they've deemed him fit now to move forward in the process. So he comes back to you, right?
Right.
And he's not in general pop like a lot of high pop.
Right. And so and a couple things people have to remember. You know, there's TV inside of every prison and jail in the country, and so so they now Whitey Bulger would not have been on TV being moved. That's not the case. But in our situation, especially with Ranking or any others, when a person's being moved back, it's a very public event, or if they get arrested tonight for some very high-profile case, the inmate population is very aware of what's going on, and so they will watch and they will know and they would see what's happening. So it's hard to keep that away from the public, the knowledge of the population. In federal prison, they don't communicate that. No one knows he's moving from Oklahoma. So that's the part that surprises me about what happened. But yeah, we're challenged by keeping the inmates safe from him, him safe from the other inmates. You know, there's a lot of challenges in that, and you just never know. I mean, let's take the Ranking case. There's no secret. There's multiple victims in that case, and somebody who was involved at the Waffle House could easily come to jail. Some victim's family member for some reason, whatever that is, and our challenge is we don't know that. Right. And so if they were to cross paths, you know, we have a lot of responsibility to make sure that he's held until his court date and so forth, and so you don't want anything to happen. And it's not easy, and it's really not easy when you're talking about drug dealing, gang members who have all sorts of enemies they don't even know. I remember years ago I was interviewing an inmate back in my old days, and you ask a bunch of questions. Do you have any enemies or incompatibles? Who can you not be housed with? And I will never forget the guy started, I got a bunch of them, I got a bunch of them. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, I can't be with 12 toes or 2 fingers. Or, he had all these nicknames. Well,
who are they?
I have no idea who I'm keeping away from. Yeah, I can't stop that, you know. And he, but you know, a lot of the drug dealing world and gang world is conflicted by they don't know who their enemies are. Yeah, that's your job to make sure then you have to protect them until they go to court. Listen, we got to take a break on that note. When we come back, we got some calls coming in for you. If you have a question for the sheriff on this morning, give us a call, 737-7587. It is, again, a spooky edition of Halloween Morning Line. We'll be right back.